Hey content creators, and welcome here to One Man Video. Today we're going to be doing a product review on the Blackmagic Studio Camera 4K version 2 that I had a chance to play around with this week. I want to give you a quick run through of this camera, but before we do, let me talk to you about why I was even looking at other cameras. So I'm shooting obviously here in my studio by myself. That's the whole premise of this channel. And one of the things that I've run into is I really would love the ability to have better control over the camera while I'm actually here standing in this position getting ready to shoot. And so this camera became very attractive to me because of some of the capabilities that we'll talk about in just a minute of how you could control it if you're using an ATEM switcher. For example, I'm using Panasonic GH4s. I have two of them. They're my main cameras in the studio, and things like controlling focus and controlling some basic adjustments are a little difficult from this area here while the cameras are out there. And while you do have some capabilities like being able to use apps on your phone to control the cameras, in some cases those don't work if you're simultaneously using the HDMI out. So I thought, hey, let me go and let me actually rent this. So I rented this from lensrentals.com. It's my first time doing that. It's been super seamless so far, no complaints about that process. But I thought that this camera would be a great thing for me to test because of some of these capabilities. So let me just go ahead and really quick give you an overview of this camera. So first of all, this camera has a massive display on the back. You can see it here. You can see here it's got focus peaking identified. And I set this up initially just in the studio, normal lighting, just as I would be shooting it with my GH4s. Now there's a couple of things that are interesting about this camera in addition to the giant display on the back that we'll get to in a minute. One is you have the ability here, there is both an SDI out as well as an SDI in. So if you're using an ATEM switcher, it has the ability to have bi-directional communication with this camera, which means you can use some of the built-in functionality like talkback controls, which are also baked into the ATEM Television Studio HD that I have. So if you had people that were behind the camera and you want to have that talkback loop, you've got that included. It also includes things like a tally indicator, which I'll show you in just a minute, so you can see from both the front and the back of the camera if it's currently live. But one of the most exciting features was the ability to use the camera control within ATEM software control to actually control this camera. So you can do things like adjusting the gain and the shutter speed, the light temperature. You can go through and adjust the iris and open it all the way up. Depending on the lens that you have, you also gain the ability to do zoom control. You also have full real-time color correction through ATEM software control using the normal DaVinci Resolve color wheels that you might have had some experience with. You have an autofocus control and, as I mentioned, zoom control, but those are all dependent on whether or not the lens that you use actually supports it. Now, you also can see here there's a tally indicator at the top here in camera control indicating that camera 5 is currently on the air. And you can see here on the front of the camera, you also have that same tally indicator as well as on the back. Right there at the top of the screen, there's a tally indicator that's currently off. But this also gives you some other unique capabilities. The program button on the back of the monitor allows you to switch from viewing basically as a viewfinder for the current shot on your camera to even viewing the program feed out of your ATEM switcher. So there's a ton of great features that are included with this camera. And I thought, man, this is gonna be a perfect addition. I can look to replace my GH4s with a camera like this, but it didn't quite work out that way. So let me just give you a quick summary on the one issue that I had with this camera that's unfortunately a bit of a deal breaker for me. While this camera is solid at what it does and would be perfect for live shooting situations, especially if you need to have talkback controls integrated in, this is just a huge value. It's about $1,600 in the US, depending on where you get it from. It would be a huge value for that, but here's the issue that I ran into. The light performance, especially when compared to using my GH4s, it was quite a bit different. We saw a massive difference, even with the lighting that I have here, which again is not super sophisticated. We'll talk more about my lighting setup in a bit, but with that lighting setup, with a studio lighting setup, it wasn't enough to really give a nice, well-lit scene through this particular camera. And I'm using, again, an f2.8 lens, which is the Lumix lens. I believe it's an 8-32. I'll have to go back and double check that. Or maybe it's a 12-32. But a pretty decent lens. I'm using the first version of that lens from Panasonic, which gives pretty good performance through the GH4s, but unfortunately it was just not enough in terms of light for me to be able to leverage this camera full-time in the studio. However, if you're in a situation where you're going to be shooting live and you're going to be in a well-lit area, this could end up being the perfect camera for you. So again, I don't want to totally knock on this camera. Let me just run over a few quick things again real quick that we didn't have a chance to talk about yet fully. So if you look at the camera, we do have, as I mentioned, you've got that SDI in and out. You also have a time code in. You also have the ability to actually have a fiber connection into the camera. We've got a normal XLR style kind of power plug there. But on the other side, this is where you get those talkback controls. So you get the ability, again, you could use a standard aviation headset. You've got headphone and microphone in here, as well as audio that you can actually have a stereo audio in from here that you can actually have that'll obviously be routed through your SDI out to your switcher. You have a lot of different areas on this as well for mounting accessories. We've got some standard areas to mount accessories. And if you notice these little thumb screws here, these are actually for securing the giant sunshade to the device that comes with it, which I don't currently have on it. But that also allows us to perform really well in a lot of different scenarios, even in shooting outside. So again, I hope you enjoyed this tour of this camera. I would recommend this if you're in a situation where low light is not a concern, or even just average light, because I feel like that's what I've got here. But if you're in a situation where that's not a concern for you, this might be exactly the kind of camera that you're looking for. Hope you've enjoyed this product review. Thanks for joining me today on One Man Video.